Activate show. I'm Cary Grant, and my guest co-host, Walt Leger is here for another evening of stimulating conversation. But first off, before we get to anything, we have a great foreign correspondent on the phone we have to get to immediately. Let me get it online. Hello, Arnie. Are you there?
Hello, guys. How are you?
Wow. There you go. Where are you, man?
We literally just landed and got to the hotel. I'm in Athens, Greece,
Oh, okay. All
and
right.
we are towards the latter part of our trip and have had quite a couple weeks here. How are you guys doing? Hey, Walter.
Hey,
How you
Arnie, how
doing?
you doing? I'm
Cary?
trying to fill some really big shoes over here,
He's doing
uh,
great.
and,
Oh, come
and
on,
having a good
come
time
on.
with Cary.
The reviews have been very good. I've been trying to follow a little bit, and
Yeah.
from what I hear, you're doing a great job, and Cary always does a great job. So it's I hope my position is still available in another couple of weeks.
Well,
You're
you better
welcome
get
back.
You better get back
I
soon.
think the
don't know.
callers are saying, "Where's Arnie?" Go and get Arnie back. But I'm just Cary's sidekick here.
Oh, we're
Yeah,
having a good time.
Yeah.
We're getting into some deep
Well, that's
issues.
good.
Yeah.
That's good.
we
Well, I've been
we we're
following New Orleans news, and
we,
lots going on there. I know
Yeah.
we had filing today for the
Yes.
mayoral and the council and all these other seats, and looking forward to talking politics when I get back.
Yeah.
But I thought if you guys will give me a couple minutes, I thought I would share a couple stories with
Sure.
you.
yeah,
Sure.
please.
Yeah, so Sue and I just we spent several days in Ukraine,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a very interesting trip. First of all, I have to tell you, we got there on July 3,
Yeah.
and I don't know if you read the news, but the night of July 3 was the worst missile attack since the
Wow.
war started 3 years ago, largely on the capital, on Kyiv,
Yeah.
and we were about 4 hours away. But the way it works there is that as soon as the Russian missiles are in the air, the alarms go off throughout the country.
Wow.
So we ended up running down to the shelter and in the hotel, and I think everybody was kind of looking at us like, "You really don't need to do that." But it's pretty jarring when the sirens go off
Yeah.
and you have this alert as an app, so you know exactly when you should go do something. Um, it's pretty jarring, and obviously Kyiv got just pounded that night, and then
Right.
yesterday was even more. It was the biggest attack yesterday on a couple different areas. But I can report to you that the people in Ukraine are, go about life. It reminds me a lot
Wow.
of Israel. You know that you've got this danger. You know that you may have to go into the shelters at any minute. But the reality is people are just kind of living life. And, we had a chance to talk to a lot of Ukrainians and some people in the military. And, they're very attuned to the United States and what Trump is doing.
Yeah.
Um, and the news over the last couple days actually has been pretty positive in terms of our president. Um, so I think the Ukrainians are hoping that maybe President Trump has seen, Russian President Putin for what he is,
Yeah.
and he's starting to change course a little bit.
Yeah. We hope he holds to
But
that. That's exactly what I wanted to talk to you about was the perspective from there. I think what you're saying is that people are better informed than some people over here may think and more aware of what's going on up to the minute. I mean, it's not like it's, totally shut down or anything like that. So they understand the nuances of what are going on in the rest of the world, particularly here, because, we've had some crazy things happen with our Defense Department about not doing arms and doing arms. And, hopefully they won't cut the flow of what's going on there.
yeah, you're right. First of all, and you both have traveled, so you
Yes.
understand this. The world is so small today. I
It
mean,
is.
something
Yes.
happening in New Orleans at 6:05 p.m. People in Ukraine will know about it 5 minutes later. I mean,
Right.
that's how fast the news travels.
True.
And as you watch, as we watched Ukrainian television, I mean, they pick up on everything happening in Washington. Who, who's meeting with whom, what is the feeling? I have to tell you, a number of people were really unhappy when we were there at the beginning because they saw Trump and Putin together. They saw Witkoff and Putin together, and they're shaking their heads and saying, "Why are you in love with Putin? He's a war criminal." And the news from the last couple of days is much more positive, and people are very aware of it. So it's really, really interesting. The other thing I wanted to tell you guys, one of the reasons we were there, is I got invited to be a member of a board of directors for a project called Promptly Lot. It is one of the most fascinating projects I've ever seen in my life. It's in a city called Ivano-Frankivsk, and it's about 4 hours from the capital. And it was an entrepreneur guy who had this vision of basically building a downtown redevelopment project. He bought an old Soviet Union factory that's no longer, working.
Yeah.
It's about 3 city blocks long, maybe longer.
Wow.
In fact, the thing that I would equate it with is, the naval facility on Poland Avenue in the river?
Yeah.
Right.
That's now being redeveloped.
Right.
The port of embarkation.
Think,
Right.
Yeah, think that building and then triple it. And this guy bought it and he redeveloped it. Again, it goes probably 4 city blocks, and he's got 60 tenants in the complex. And they're not only, some are commercial tenants, but some are restaurants, some are bars, et cetera. But a lot of the projects are nonprofit social transformation projects. People build, we met people that were making uniforms for the Ukrainian soldiers out of environmentally friendly materials and recycled materials. Other people were doing other things. So again, it's a real estate project, but it's much more than that because it's really helping make the city and the world a little better place.
Yeah.
And I wrote to a couple people in New Orleans already, and I said, look, when I get back, I really need to brief you on this because can you imagine a project like that in New Orleans? I was looking like at Bywater or the Holy Cross area or maybe the Ninth Ward or New Orleans East. And the entrepreneur, to his credit, he put a global board of directors together of about a dozen people. I'm one of 3 people from the U.S. I don't really know why I'm on it, to be honest, other than there's a little bit of a sports component, Walter, to this because a section of the complex is helping disabled veterans of the Ukrainian Army by using sports.
Good.
So I think that's kind of where my expertise is going to be with these guys. But it's a very cool project, and I'll be able to brief you guys a little bit more, on radio when we get back.
That's great. Great.
Look to hearing more about it.
Yeah. That sounds great. I'm glad to hear that people are, like you said, succeeding in life and still living their lives. I mean, they're in a hard situation, but that's how you persevere through these types of things and don't lose sight of your humanity and what your people are all about. And I think that that's a good sign that people are still saying, we're going to invest, we're going to do things here. And if we can get this yoke off of our backs, then we can thrive and succeed. And I think that shows a lot of spirit.
Arnie, do they fully understand that despite the administration's back and forth, that the American people are very much supportive of them?
Yeah, that's a great point, Walter. Yes, they are. I think they see some of the MAGA crowd, and it makes them worried. They may not have, but one of the things that the Americans that were there for this event, that we told them is, look, 60-70% of the American public is for Ukraine, and the same thing with Congress.
Absolutely.
The problem with Congress is that they're just not pulling the trigger right now because they don't want to they don't want to get out front of President Trump. But I think the people are, first of all, they are very, very thankful and appreciative of both the American support and the European support. They know that without that, I mean, they would be dead at this point.
Sure.
So over and over, people will thank you and express that gratitude. But I think they're also becoming tired and weary. I mean, this war has gone on for 3 years now. The men, if you're under, I think it's 55, I believe. I mean, the men are fighting in different parts of the country. And, it also depends where you live. If you're on the western side of Ukraine, which is where I was, I mean, you are subject to missile attack and drone attack, but it's not every day. It's fairly rare. Yeah. But if you're living in the capital of Kyiv or in the second biggest city, which is Kharkiv, which is on the eastern part of the country, just a few miles from the Russian border, I mean, those cities are literally getting pounded every night. And the stories you hear from people is it's just too much. I mean, every night people have to go into the subway stations because that is where the shelters are.
Wow.
Most people do not have shelters in their homes or any of that. So the only place that most people that live in Kyiv or Kharkiv go is they go underground to the metro, and and people are sleeping there. And I mean, if you did it once or twice like we did, it's no big deal. But if you're doing it every night, and then you have to be at work, and somebody told us I don't know if it's a joke or not, but the statement is that Ukrainians get up, they go to work in the morning at 9:00, and if you're at work at 9:00, it means you survived. If not, you're dead. And that's that's a very unfortunate way to look at life. But I have to tell you, this is like my fourth trip now. I've never met people more genuine, more courageous than Ukrainian people. And, obviously there's people that don't fit that mold, but, they're in a war that they never wanted. They understand they're up against an enemy that's very evil. And the fact is that Russia really doesn't want to stop the war. It wants to crush Ukraine.
Right.
And I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't. But, Russia's lost over 1 million people already in this war, because their strategy is they just throw people out there. It's like a meat grinder approach.
Yes.
So, that's consistent with Stalin's approach before and during and after World War II.
It's a good analogy because it reminds me a lot of London during the Blitz, the things you're describing, the resolve of people who will fight, and the fact that we're doing basically Lend-Lease, and we need to keep doing it from America to help them out.
And Arnie, I recognize that it's hard to discuss war in the context of us being part of a civilized society, but in the context of the civilized society that the world is supposed to be, how can you possibly justify the constant bombarding of a civilian population in a city as having some military objective? It just makes no sense other than just pure criminality.
100%, Walter.
Yes.
I mean, the fact is that when Ukraine attacks, they attack military targets.
Right.
And they're very successful. The new warfare, and this is applicable for the United States as well. The new warfare is not tanks anymore; it's drones.
Yeah,
sure,
and
absolutely.
Ukraine is producing an unbelievable amount of drones. That's one thing that's keeping them, at least somewhat neutral in terms of the battle.
Sure.
Russia doesn't care about people. I mean, they go after hospitals and schools, and really what they're trying to do is crush, the civilian strength.
Yeah.
and it's a terrible strategy. And they have North Koreans now. I mean, there's tens of thousands of North Koreans that are fighting on Russia's behalf, and they don't care about them. They literally throw the North Koreans to the front of the lines.
Yeah.
And I mean, thousands have already been killed so far.
Wow.
So, let's hope let's hope that President Trump has changed his view here. The fact is Putin was playing him, has been playing him.
God, yes.
And I'm hoping that, the president has finally woken up to see that. And, he announced yesterday that he was going to give defensive weapons to Ukraine. What they need more than anything is they need the Patriot system, similar to what Israel has, so that when missiles come into Kyiv, they could be shot down as opposed to hitting the targets.
Right.
That more than anything is what's needed, for Ukraine to stay in this. And look, I believe there will be a diplomatic solution, but there's only going to be a diplomatic solution when Putin believes, that he can't win anymore on the battlefield.
Right.
Well, and that entails, I think, Arnie, the fact that one, Trump has got to really mean it when he says that he's finally had enough of dealing with Putin.
Yes.
That Putin is not being straight with him, and he's giving up on Putin, because as long as Putin thinks that Trump is going to still be his friend and try to save him, Putin, is encouraged to keep it up.
Right.
You're right. I mean, this is a little country that's fighting a former superpower.
Right.
A power that's got nuclear weapons. You have to admire the fortitude and the ability to do it. And yes, and thank God that we have been supportive of them and all of Europe, because otherwise they'd have been crushed long ago.
Well, Arnie, we're going to take a break, and I guess you're going to go because you're far away.
I'm going to go. It's 2:30. I'm going to let you guys take it from here, guys. Walter, thank you for co-hosting, and Cary, keep up the great work, and I'll see you in about 2 weeks.
Hey, man, thanks for calling in, Arnie. We miss you. Can't wait till you're back.
Be safe.
I can go back to having a late dinner with my wife.
Be safe, my friend.
All right, guys. Have a good night.
Bye.
Get in on the conversation at 504-582-9422.
New Orleans never sleeps, and neither does WBOK. Now, every voice, every moment, and every show is in your pocket. Search WBOK Media wherever you get podcasts. Download, share, rate us 5 stars. Because when you support us, you amplify Black voices and the New Orleans culture.
Late nights are made for chillin', and you can do just that every Sunday night at 10 p.m. as DJ Wick brings you The Love Zone. It's the perfect way to top off your weekend with your favorite old and new school ballads. So sit back, relax, and let DJ Wick take you to the Love Zone on WBOK and on the World Wide Web at WBOK1230.com.
On the next edition of The Way Forward, we'll have a conversation about preparing for marriage and what healthy marriages mean for the community. I'll be joined by premarital counselors Lawrence and Erica Houston. Plus, we'll share what's good, the go forward message, and tell you what you need to know about good stuff happening in the community. Join me Saturday at 3 p.m. It's The Way Forward with Eddie Francis here on 1230 a.m. or streaming live at WBOK1230.com and the Play-O app on WBOK. What New Orleans is talking about.
Hello, friend. Tavis Smiley here with a special announcement. You can catch my show at a new time, weekdays from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Same great topics, same great guests, same great conversations, just a little earlier in the day. It's Tavis Smiley, weekdays 1 to 4 p.m. only on WBOK 1230 a.m. What New Orleans is talking about.
WBOK online at WBOK1230.com.
The Arnie and Cary Show with Arnie Philco and Cary Grant.
And we are back. We just had a great call with my friend Arnie, mine Walter's friend, and a lot of people in New Orleans' friend Arnie Felk, who's just spent some time in the Ukraine. And it was great to hear from him and to hear how things are going over there. And it's good to know that the people over there know the people of America, for the majority of the people, are with them and want them to succeed.
And Cary and I, during the commercial break, we're kind of sharing our emotional reaction to hearing from Arnie talking about what it's like on the ground there.
Yes.
And how hard it is for us Americans to believe, how good we have it here.
Yes.
And that they are on the front line fighting against basically the remnants of the evil empire that was the Soviet Union.
Right.
And some crazy attempt to just take back a piece of the Soviet Union.
Exactly.
It's even hard to understand the justification for the fact that this war is going on.
Right. It really is. And it's a humanitarian crisis that's terrible. And I think that the American people need to be reminded of it every now and again. We have a lot of things going on in New Orleans and everywhere in this country, but we need to be reminded that these people are putting up a good fight for a good cause. And
I mean, we're very spoiled.
Yes,
that we have, that war has been so distant for us.
Yes,
both in time and in geography.
Yeah.
And
we've been very fortunate with that.
You got to feel for those people who are, like Arnie said, if you show up for work at 9 o'clock, oh, you're alive.
Yeah, right. That's a great hardcore attitude to have, that you don't have to worry about if you're just going to work downtown every morning at 9. The thing I wanted to get into is, and it segues really well, because we've been talking about the big brutal bill, as we call it, that was passed recently by Congress. And one thing that they did do, and this is parcel of what we were just talking about, they increased the defense budget by a lot. I mean, it's still, I'm still sifting through it to see what they are increasing in the defense budget, meaning what things are being bought and sold with that money. But here's another example of, if you're increasing the defense budget, some of that defense budget money that's already there and that's coming should go to this cause, because you're talking about hundreds of billions more that's being added, and these people aren't asking for hundreds of billions of dollars. They've spent and used probably $90 billion over the last 3 years, but it's been put to a good cause in my mind.
And our defense budget is the biggest budget we have.
Yes,
and it's over $1 trillion.
Right. So this, it's not a drop in the bucket, but it is something about what we should be about as a country. And this is about the defense of Europe, about a lot of things, and commerce and all types of things that everybody feels on the back end. If we don't, if they don't succeed, there'll be more trouble, and it'll get. And at some point, as you said, war has been distant for us in time and space. But honestly, if this goes the wrong way and we have to get into a NATO type situation, this could become American people on the ground.
Absolutely.
That's what we really don't want.
Like a lot of people in the military have said, we're fighting over here, over there, to keep them from being fighting here in America.
Absolutely.
And it's a shame, and it's, again, hard to conceptualize that there are wars that are significant and that we are involved in.
Yes.
And fortunately, we're involved in them from a little bit of a difference, and we're able to assist, for example, the Ukrainians in fighting the enemy.
Yes.
And giving us a little bit of insulation. But on the other hand, that's why we need to help.
Right.
We need to help.
I wanted to get back to what we were talking about yesterday, particularly when we talked about the deficit, which a lot of people is such a ridiculous number. I mean, we're talking about trillions of dollars, and the bill adding 3 or 4 trillion more to that deficit over the years, and the imported a deficit. And you were given some good historical data on deficits over the years with presidents and how they can be dealt with. And it's not an impossible problem, but you add more to it, it makes it worse.
Well, they can be. Just to kind of refresh that a little bit. From back in the days of Nixon, the deficit during the 8 years of Nixon and Ford was it got up to $54 billion.
Right.
$54 billion.
Right. And we wished it was
a B.
Right.
In Nixon's time, our lifetimes.
Right.
Not all of y'all out there, but us more mature people. Jimmy Carter became president, and they went from $54 billion to $79 billion. Right. And then Reagan became president, and the deficit nearly doubled.
Right.
This was the fiscal conservative using the concept of supply side economics on the belief and the argument that if you cut taxes, it'll stimulate the economy will grow, it'll create more taxes,
Right.
and you can balance the budget. Well, it didn't work. And it's
Right.
never worked.
It's never worked.
And so, but what we learned is that when you cut taxes and you increase spending,
you create more deficit.
Yeah, so cutting taxes is not a solution to the deficit. It actually contributes.
And most times, and I'll just make an aside, and I'll let you get back to the list, but most times what happens is when Republicans come in, they do want to lower taxes, which, or keep taxes maintained lower.
We all
as
want
they're
to lower
doing now,
taxes.
and everybody loves that, but everybody should participate too.
That's
but
right.
the other thing they do is they always want to increase defense spending, which is the largest portion, which means you're not really you're going up on both sides.
And,
your revenue and expenditures.
And remember, Cary, when Republican President Eisenhower was leaving office in his final speech, he warned to beware of the military-industrial complex.
Absolutely, and he was
warned
absolutely correct.
That was such a powerful entity. That is, the private companies that supply the weapons and the munitions, et cetera, that we needed to beware that the military-industrial complex didn't do just what has happened.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not saying we shouldn't be. We were just talking about how important defense is to us. But you're right. So we keep expending. But the other thing that happens is military bases become parts of communities, and if you notice, they've gotten spread around the country into the districts of important congressmen and the states of important senators over the years, to the point that they become important parts of the economy. And that's a way that you can bring money back to your district as a member of Congress. You pump it into that military.
Sure, that's absolutely correct. And the whole of it is you have a large portion of the budget, $700-800 billion a year annually, just in its core, and like you said, even higher overall. But some of the things we're talking about are some of the weapon systems and things that we're talking about, and like drones and those type of things, can cost $1 million. That's a lot of money, whatever. But when you talk about somebody building fighter planes or adding more orders for fighter planes to be built, then they have to be sold or they have to be used by us. You can't have something that's $40 million for one plane. It's like those numbers have gotten so ridiculous on some weapon systems, and we both know that's because of the military-industrial complex. Some of those things cannot cost what they cost.
Yeah, I mean, they really have. I remember reports of $700 ashtray,
and they had hammers that were $500.
$500 hammers.
Like, all of those type of things. And like we said, you don't want to not be strong, but we have a lot of people in the military who need pay and that type of thing, and benefits, and those things are being cut. And veterans who, I say this all the time, I think government has 3 responsibilities first. One is our elderly, second is our children, and the third is our veterans. Because if somebody, I don't care what you do, if you say, particularly with our volunteer army, which you and I both have lived through this whole era of, people are really
through the draft.
Volunteering. They're not being drafted, and they're joining the army. And when they get out, especially the ones who've been injured or hurt, we should never think about cutting the Veterans Administration, those type of things. And that's still ongoing with these plans. This does not increase that part of it.
No, that's absolutely correct. Veterans have really been underserved.
Yeah.
I mean, they serve our country. They occasionally go into actual war zones, and they have in the recent past.
Yes.
They live, and then they come out with the expectation that the great Veterans Hospital we have in New Orleans will take care of them. And from everything I understand, it's obviously an improvement to what it was, but they are not. It takes so long. Actually, the New Orleans Bar Association, when I was president of the Bar Association, we promoted a program of providing legal assistance at the Veterans Hospital for veterans who are having difficulties with their claims. Putting their claims to get their compensation, to get their medical, because the red tape was so difficult. The process was so that they needed lawyers. To help them get it done. So we were doing it for free, pro bono.
But there shouldn't be no person who served the country, particularly if they've been wounded or anything like, or been in a war zone on the front lines. I'm just saying, there's different levels of veterans, but those people should not have to worry about anything.
They shouldn't have to worry.
They shouldn't be, their families shouldn't be starving. They shouldn't be worried about their mental health. That should be being taken care of. And like you said, having a bunch of red tape on top of, now we're talking about cuts to the programs that were working.
Well, plus we also know that there are, you mentioned mental health among veterans, that there is a high degree of suicides among those who have come out of the military. And, you know, I can only speculate. The experts could tell you why, I guess, but that's why there has to be some attention to dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Sure.
And dealing with the risk of suicide and mental illness among veterans, just like everybody else. But those are the people we made a promise to.
Yes. And they took an oath, and they took an oath for us. And as you said, you know, what people have to understand about America's a bunch of contracts. You're a lawyer, so you understand what I mean. It's a bunch of social contracts that we make with each other. You know, I pay taxes, you pay taxes. I don't mind paying taxes for people I may not agree with about their philosophy or their ideology, but I also feel like that's part of the obligation that I have as a citizen. So their lives not being that bad is not a problem for me.
I mean, that's absolutely.
And that's the social contract. These guys and women who are in the military make a social contract with us. I'm going to stand on the front lines for you and your family so you don't have to suffer.
Right.
And some of them pay the ultimate price for it. So
and accordingly, we entered the contract that we're going to provide you with the services,
the things that you need
for doing that for us, and which is very similar to what happened actually in the Revolutionary War, before 1776 and throughout and thereafter, and that is a bunch of civilians came together to fight off the yoke of oppression and tyranny. And the deal was, okay, we're going to pay you to go to war, and we're going to take care of you when it's over, and we're going to protect your property. And by the way, one of the reasons we're going to war is this king over there stuck some taxes on us to pay for things that they need over in England, and didn't ask us. We didn't get represented. We didn't even get asked, is it okay if we put a tax on tea? If we put a tax on on tobacco and other products, we're going to just tax you, and we're going to take the money in England.
And something that's very American, and we have all kinds of different takes on everything, but something that's very American is, I think Americans, black, white, whatever, really have this sense of, we don't like to be handled in certain ways. And I think that that's a real issue that we are all dealing with now. Some of these things that have been passed recently seem like they've been foisted on us by someone who wants to pretend to be a king about things we don't want to do as a group.
Absolutely. And I think you raise a really interesting point, and that is that there is a social contract.
Yes.
And part of that social contract is, okay, the legislature is going to agree to tax us, and we're going to be paying a certain amount of money. But and we're electing people to do that, and we may not like this particular thing they're going to spend money on, but they're also going to spend some of that money on things we like, and that we want, and so therefore we're willing to make a deal as part of the contract, that some people get what they want, some get, and we get some of what we want. And by the way, we can't build roads. And back in the old days when there were just dirt roads and there was a small number of homes, I guess you could build a dirt road and ride your wagon on it. But we can't build the interstate highways were built under the Eisenhower administration by the defense budget. With the theory that we were going to move,
if we had to move things to defend ourselves, which was a great angle, but
that's right.
It's really just that's why we drive our cars.
But so that was good for all of us. For all of us that use it. And then we build airports. The government builds that. We build bridges. We build with our tax monies.
And one thing about the health care cuts that we've been talking about a lot, particularly the health care cuts, what you and I are making a social contract about, and everybody's making a contract about. I want people to understand, you want your neighbors to not be ill.
That's right.
You want your neighbors to not be sick, because the sicker they are, the more it costs you as well.
That's right.
You want them to be able to take care of things in advance, to have preventative care and the like. And to take those things away and to take the research away to make people well, it flies in the face of, like I said, two of the pillars of government that I think you have, which is taking care of your children and taking care of your elderly. Those are the most vulnerable population.
I realize, Cary, we're not an evangelical show, but one of my favorite parts of the Bible comes from Matthew 25, where Jesus basically said, "When I was hungry, you gave me food.
Yes.
Thirsty, you gave me water. In prison, you visited me. When I was naked, you gave me clothes. You were a foreigner, you welcomed me."
Yes.
And basically, what he was saying is, this is the things that we do.
Yeah.
You know, and as Americans, that pretty lines up with, I think, what most of us believe we should be doing, helping people that need to help others. But there's an unselfish motive too, and not just a religious motive, and that is when we provide medical services to the poor
yes.
that need it, and we're using taxpayer money to do it. That one, we're making them better. They can go back to work. They can work. They're not a drain on society if we can make them healthy
sure.
and help make them healthy. And secondly, we're paying doctors. We're paying nurses.
Right.
We're paying hospitals.
Because
that money is being pumped back into the economy.
Because the economy is this big organism, and every time you feed that organism, things go well for everybody. As they always say, rising tide lifts all boats.
Absolutely.
The other thing is we wanted to talk about is the SNAP cuts, where we're talking about the cuts to the
same thing
food stamp benefits, as Don called in last night and said there's a multiplier effect with that about buying food and the like. But it's also the underlying theme is to take care of people who are struggling with those things. Nobody wants somebody to die or to starve to death in a country with this much bounty. You know, you can't have a country that's number one economy in the world and say we have starving people.
And have people starving.
Yeah. And the thing about it is parts of those things, and I always say this about the trickle-down theory, is if the trickle-down theory was really working, if you raised all boats, maybe you wouldn't have some of these quote-unquote entitlement programs.
Well,
if you had a good wage, you wouldn't have an entitlement program.
And that's, the point that you made, quite a while ago about the big brutal bill, as some people call it.
Yes.
In fact, I heard someone say, Martin Luther King Jr. said that the arc of history is long, but it bends always toward justice. And I heard someone say, well, that arc is being bent backwards right now with this bill. Because what's being bent backwards about it is that not only is it producing a massive deficit over time, which eventually deficits are impacted the most on the lower income people, because what happens when you try to solve it is you cut back on government programs, which impact those people.
They need the most, right?
But nonetheless, it impacts everybody because it's a debt that we all owe.
Yeah.
By the way, another story for another day, much of which is owned by the Chinese.
Yes.
But in any event,
there's that factor too.
The point is, in this bill, we're giving tax cuts, which is creating the massive tax cuts to the wealthiest of Americans.
Yes.
The people that need the tax cuts the least. And by the way, when you give tax, and we're giving some tax cuts to middle income earners and lower income earners.
Right.
But if you'd give the bigger tax cuts to them and the lesser to the wealth, then you would, like the fellow that called last night that you were talking about the multiplier, the rippling effect in the economy.
It would have that
That's
effect.
what stimulates,
right.
Because the middle income guy is going to take that money and spend it on something, buy something.
Yes.
The rich guy, his life is not going to change.
No.
He may, stick it in the stock market or something.
Right. He'll shelter more money. He'll have more money to put aside in a way that doesn't hurt him.
But he's not going to go buy maybe a hamburger instead of a cheap hot dog.
Right.
And let the grocer make a little bit more money so he can pay his people more, which stimulates the economy. And that's what SNAP does too.
It's like I said before when they were talking about Bezos' wedding and all this. And, he has a $500 million yacht. And everything you're saying, Walt, is if he got another 1% on his money, he's not going to buy another $500 million yacht. He's really not going to.
He may have to, if you didn't give him these tax cuts, he may have to settle for $400 million.
Right, exactly.
And save $100 million.
These people have multiple homes. They have multiple things.
Right.
They're not struggling to get to their kid into school or to pay for college or whatever. And some people, like you said, if these numbers were pushed down into the middle class particularly, and one thing, and I just want to say this too, the idea of changing the student loan repeals is just insanity, because that is flat out money that would help people out to not have debt.
That the person with the student loan, and I understand how people that are paid didn't get a student loan, they paid for their own money to send their kid to college. How mad they resent it, maybe. Right. But you got to look at it from a macroeconomic effect, like you said. You wipe that loan away. That student that borrowed that money, instead of paying the loan off, can now spend it on stuff.
Absolutely.
And let it ripple in the economy.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
WBOK, online at WBOK1230.com.
New Orleans, are you ready for a voice that says what you're thinking? Who that, you might ask? Arrington Gavin. That's right, I'm your guy, host of the Arrington Gavin Show, giving you so much filled with bold opinions, real conversations, and zero sugarcoating. We're going to be diving into the issues that matter: politics, pop culture, and all the above, unfiltered and unafraid. Catch the Arrington Gavin Show weeknights from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m., Monday through Fridays, right here on WBOK, what New Orleans is talking about.
Plan on flying? It's time to upgrade to a Real ID. Because in order to board domestic flights, your driver's license or state-issued ID must be a Real ID, or you'll need another acceptable form of identification. So don't wait. Find out how to get your Real ID at tsa.gov/Real ID. That's tsa.gov/Real ID, or visit your local DMV. And then you'll be cleared for takeoff.
Hey, this is D. Riley from the 90s Hits R&B Jams. Make sure you listen to WBOK 1230 AM every Saturday night from 7 until 9 p.m. I'll be giving you the best R&B jams from the 90s. That's right, all your favorites and more. With me, D. Riley, your host of the 90s Hits, right here on WBOK 1230 AM, or listen online at WBOK1230.com. WBOK, the station you listen to longer.
I'm David Patan Sr., owner of Whole Water and Food Over Medicine Academy, coach, consultant, and instructor. We're excited about our 21-day challenge. Stop, prevent, and reverse disease today. Cholesterol, diabetes type 2, high blood pressure, along with chronic illnesses and diseases. We believe that the gift of wellness is the greatest gift, and for $30 per month, $1 a day, you could have this gift for you and your family.
I'm Phyllis Washington, and I've benefited with health and weight loss.
For your gift of $30, healing and wellness can be yours. Call 504-701-4711. That's 504-701-4711. The Whole Water Store. See you at 2135 Washington Avenue today.
From Gentilly to New Orleans East, WBOK is what New Orleans is talking about. WBOK.
The Arnie and Cary Show with Arnie Philco and Cary Grant.
And we are back. We have a caller. Let me get to the caller right quick. Donna, you on the line?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, how you doing there?
Good evening to you, Mr. LeJew, and of course, Cary Grant.
Yes.
You was born Cary Grant. Cary Grant was born Archibald Leach.
That's correct. I'm the real Cary Grant. That's the way that goes.
He looks like Cary Grant, too.
Yes, sir.
And our engineer is John Wick, so we got another star here.
It was great hearing Mr. Philco over there in Greece and giving us an update on Ukraine on the ground. And I watched Rich Steve a lot. Mm-hmm. He always is traveling to Europe, and I didn't know there was hundreds of Greek islands.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. There really are.
My purpose of my call, you guys had such an interesting conversation going. Thank y'all for letting us being privy to it.
Mm-hmm.
This is my question, I guess, or comment is: it says that the wealthy 1% owns about 80%, or the vast majority, the super majority of all asset-producing companies, stocks.
Yes.
Okay, and yet the U.S. economy is a consumer-driven economy.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take the consumption ability away from the consumers, how does that? I mean, the wealthy are going to benefit anyway if they're paying more in taxes to increase consumption, I would imagine.
Yes.
So they're benefiting on. So are they with this tax cut? Is that a way of double dipping, or I don't? I'm trying to juxtapose the simple math. The math ain't mathing to me. If it's a majority consumer driven economy, and yet the wealthy own the super majority of all the assets and all of the manufacturing and banking. What type of relationship are we developing, I wonder, in this country?
Okay.
Well, what we know is that in recent years, these billionaires, their wealth has grown exponentially.
Yes.
While the wealth of the middle class and lower wage earners has not grown nearly as much because of the stimulation. And by the way, we probably have a vanishing middle class, but because of the consumer nature of the economy, I mean, you nailed it. And they grow that wealth from it. Now, many of the really big, wealthy, really the wealthiest people, are new technology. Amazon and Apple and Microsoft and that type of thing, which also develops into consumer driven. But you have a point. There is a point at which if you keep taking if you're taking money away from the consumers, that the wealthy aren't going to benefit as much.
Right.
That's what you're saying.
Give you an example. If you talk about Apple, Apple is a company, one of the largest companies, one of the richest companies. Their owners are some of these people we're talking about. If you talk about Apple, if you want to charge me $1,000 for a phone, but I don't have $1,000, then you can charge me all you want, but I'm not buying phones. And there's more of us buying phones than there are of them. So at some point, you're cutting the consumer out because you're squeezing his money. You're going to go to your basic needs first. You're going to buy food. You're going to do those type of things, shelter, those type of things. These other things will become luxuries if you keep putting the squeeze on everybody. And this healthcare cut will put squeezes on people.
There's no question about it. And again, back to the healthcare cuts. If you cut Medicaid, the way Medicaid works is the person who, as a recipient of the Medicaid benefit, does not get the money.
Right.
The money doesn't go to him. The money goes to the medical institution.
Right.
And that means that's federal money that pays the medical institution or the doctor, and with a small percentage coming from the state. You take away Medicaid and the federal aspect, then the state's got to pay it all.
Right.
Because we're not turning anybody that goes to an emergency room doesn't get turned away.
But will the state be able to pay?
Can the state handle it?
Right.
And what does the state do? But do they have to raise taxes then to deal with it and otherwise?
Right.
So it's there are all kind of balances and complexities. It's not as simple as the administration would like to make it out to be.
And I think that, like what we're saying, we've been saying this for days now, but what I think we need to really focus people on is, just like I talked about Project 2025, which you still, if you haven't gotten summarized that or whatever, you should look at that. If you're interested in what's going on, and you should look at the big beautiful bill in its summary, and you should look at what it does. It has many strictures in it, many things in it that are very hurtful to people, and things like Walt and I were saying during the break that just don't add up. You can't take away, and tell somebody I'm giving you a quarter, and that quarter means nothing. Right. And that's what this thing does to a lot of different levels of people. And some of the cuts are just foolish cuts too, because one cut that I heard the other day, which just floored me, is this eliminates the excise tax on using a tanning booth. Now, who do we know who likes to use tanning booths, and why would that be a big deal? So, I mean, that's just one particular line way in the back of the bill. Way in the back of the bill.
I might start using a tanning booth.
Exactly. I mean, it's just, well,
how about you?
A lot of people don't need them. So, but I'm just saying that it just shows you the level of how crazy some of the things are.
Another thing I read was that what they're doing is they're applying what we used to call accelerated appreciation. They're now calling it a bonus appreciation, and that is certain capital assets that a business might buy. You could, not appreciate, depreciation.
Yeah.
You would depreciate it over time, and taking the deduction, the business deduction for
right.
it.
Yeah.
They're going to throw the whole value into year one,
right?
Particularly on certain capital investments like jet airplanes, passenger jets for executives of companies.
Yes, I did.
So I mean, I think you and I might just run out and buy us a jet.
Exactly,
airplane.
because why not? I mean, now it's a huge tax break. That was all was stopping me from buying my own private jet.
That's what I was.
So this has been a great discussion. I mean, very interesting. And I just want people to realize that this is very, very crucial that people understand what this is. There'll be fights. There'll be backtracking on this bill. There'll be all kinds of things. This, because of the nature of how it was packaged as one thing, as Trump even said himself yesterday, this would not have passed. Certain sections of this would not have passed at all if it had been done the proper way,
right,
as several 8-9
individual bills,
which is usually what the federal budget is. Mm-hmm. And that's why they made one bill, to hide things and to make it where there was different processes to be used to pass the bill. So it's very important that people pay attention to this. And I think that this will be the linchpin in how people start perceiving what's going on, in addition to DOGE cuts and things like that that are starting to have a real detrimental effect on everybody. And the ruling from the Supreme Court today about you can go forward with getting rid of employees is going to be very hurtful in the overall scheme of things.
I'm anxious for us, Cary, maybe in the next time to talk a little bit about the big bill and what it did to the National Weather Service, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, the cuts there, which may have had nothing to do with what happened in Texas, but if those cuts go through, they certainly have made it difficult. And then the recommendations that have been made in Texas and ignored, that could have prevented this disaster.
I think we'll devote our first segment at least tomorrow to those very things, because those are things that I think and you think will have an impact on people in the very near future.
It'll have an impact on us indirectly.
Yes.
What happened over there.
Yes.
What happens, here for fighting hurricanes and others.
Well, that's it for tonight. We're going to shut it down for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow. Great show. Great to hear from Arnie, and see you all tomorrow. Thank you, Walt.
Thank you, Cary.